Hello, friends. My name's Steve, and I'm here today with Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. Mike's, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, man, thanks for asking.
Yeah, I would always wanted to ask you, and I was kind of hesitating and thinking, no, you don't have time for me. And it was actually my son who told me you should ask Mike if you were watching one of your weekly updates.
Mm.
And he said you should ask Mike if he would chat with you. And I said Mike doesn't care about me, but
No, I say all
I'll
the
try
time.
anyway.
Not only do I love talking to other content creators, I love it when I do it on their channel because that means I don't have to edit anything. That's great.
Yeah, it is pretty nice. Yeah, I'm still waiting for that, but yeah. So I want to thank you. I know you're busy, you have lots going on, lots of content to make, a family. So thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
I wanted to personally thank you because your channel got me back into reading and got me onto BookTube. So been a
Great. I love
positive
hearing that.
influence on
I
me.
love hearing that. Sorry, I'm having like a camera malfunction, but we can keep going. This is live. We're doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah, we were doing it live. So I was curious, and I'm sure I'm going to try and ask you questions you haven't had before, or at
Sure.
least try and keep them interesting. Was there someone in your life that had inspired you to, or encouraged you to read?
And I guess we would say my brother, my oldest brother. I grew up in the you know early '80s, mid '80s, Gen Xer. So we didn't have the options that kids have now. So reading was pretty much it. But I grew up pretty poor. So basically, my library was whatever my brother had in his room. So yeah, finding that gateway to Tolkien, Stephen King, and stuff in his bedroom is always going to be someone else. So even though he's like, I didn't tell you to read that, I'll always give him credit for that because without his library, I probably never would have done it. So
Yeah. And what do you enjoy about reading that you don't get from other forms of entertainment? Because
I
there
think
are
the
so many
greatest
now.
thing about reading a book is like you see every time there's like, for example, look at this Wheel of Time adaptation right now, and everyone's just so mad about everything. Either if it's up to this doesn't look right, this doesn't do this. In your head, man, you can fan cast anybody you want. They don't have to worry about a budget. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You can do whatever you want. A full-on movie in your mind. That's it. So that's what it's always been for me. It's just ultimate form of entertainment because it can look like anything you want in your head.
Yeah, and that is always better, isn't it? That's why
Yeah.
most adaptations don't work for most people, I think, is
Yeah, it don't
what you
matter if
imagine
the
in your
actors
head.
are even alive anymore. You can cast anybody you want. It's great. You can cast yourself. It's awesome.
That's true. That's true. I'd probably be the jester, though, I think, in any of these movies. But so with the channel your size, what has surprised you most about your time on BookTube?
I think that anybody has any interest in what I think about books is always one that I'm still kind of every day wondering how did this happen. It's just one of those things I didn't really plan for it to be a thing. I had podcasted for years, kind of struggled with ever finding an audience. When I did find somebody, be like, "Wow, you're really good at this." I'm like, "Yeah, please tell people," because it's really hard to find an audience with podcasting much more than I think it is on YouTube because it's just for every podcast you have, there's 200 other ones just like it out there. And I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of bad ones out there, and people get that idea of, most podcasts have audio issues and stuff. They don't want to listen to it. They'd rather listen to the radio or something, something professional. So with this, it was just, hey, I was making videos to kind of remind myself what happens in Wheel of Time while I was reading through that. And back then I'd get like, 6, 7 views per video. And when those started coming out, I was like, whoa, I got like 300 views off this. What happened? And that's when I learned, oh, there's this whole big thing of people review books on YouTube. I had no idea. Well, I can do that. Here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, I think it helps that because there are a ton of podcasts and there are a ton of YouTube channels too. But with the algorithm and the search engine on YouTube, it makes it easier to get your stuff out there.
Sometimes. Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah. So, what is your process for making a video? Do you have a tradition or a routine that you do, or?
I wish I could tell people that, I mean, look, I could. You could say, hey, you just finished reading that book, review it. I could. It's just like you go back to the very earliest videos on this channel. It's basically what I did. I just turned the camera on and saw what happened. After a while, I was like, I need to get some kind of structure. That's why I got kind of the format that I do now. But as far as like, do I write a script or anything like that? No. In case you guys don't know, I have no problems talking. That's just kind of what I do. So I'll make myself on my iPad. I'll make myself little bullet points just to make sure that I remember to talk about it. That's really it. But I don't ever write like notes or anything. I'll just be like, okay, like I just finished before we started this record my Empire of the Vampire review, and I just wrote down like character names to make sure that I remember to talk about each thing. That's really about it. That's what I do. But no real planning involved there, other than just somewhat turn the camera on, see what happens. Just make sure I stick to that format I have. What's it about? Why you should read it? Is it good or bad? Those kind of things. That's really it. I guess I'm pretty fortunate in that because I have a lot of fellow content creators are like, oh yeah, I got to write the script, and I was like, you go off a script? Wow, that's awesome. That sounds so professional. And I'm like, I ain't got time for that.
Well, that leads into one of the questions that were submitted.
Oh,
Kind of
good.
answered it already, but YouTuber Book Blather, he was curious about your pre-game procedure before you hit record, because your videos always move at a rapid pace and look professional, yet it seems like you make very few cuts. So how long do you spend
Yeah.
planning? So yeah.
When I like I said, when I first learned this was a thing, and I'd watch some of those other videos, and I see the people with like the cuts like every 6 seconds, that's just jarring to me. So I said the approach I wanted to go for, and I think this is where podcasting first helped, is I said I just want to have the person listening to this feel like we're sitting at a bar or we're sitting at a coffee house and we're just having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'm going to leave things like me taking a sip of my coffee in there. I'm going to leave things like, oh, I have to scratch my ear or rub my eye or something. I'm going to leave that in there because I was just like, I want this to feel like a conversation over a million cuts. Now, if I have a cut in a video now, I've either sneezed or my kids have knocked on the door. And that happens a lot more than you think. Got a long-haired dog. It makes me sneeze a lot. So there's that. But other than that, no, I mean, I don't really have like a real I guess you'd say like a pregame process. Like you guys know, I'll do what I call a cold open. I'll do a line and then I'll do my intro. I make that up just before I even go. I'm like, I have no idea what to say. Let's just see what comes up. And I'm 9 times out of 10, it works out. Sometimes like, I didn't have anything funny to say, or because I don't like to use a lot of humor because I'm not very funny. I don't think I am. So I'm like, I'm not going to use a bunch of humor. So I was like, if I'm ever going to do anything kind of witty or out of character, I'll do it in that little cold open kind of thing, something like that. But other than that, no, like I said, just make bullet points and so I remember what to talk about.
So I had another question from Fit to Be Read. His question is, as a booktuber, do you ever struggle with finding a balance between what content you want to create versus what you think is expected of your channel versus what will get clicks?
Absolutely.
Example,
Absolutely. Yeah. I've always said like I'm never going to do stuff for clicks. I know people think that's just like a line, but I mean, guys, if that was the case, I'd be doing Brandon Sanderson 24/7 because I mean, look, there's just about all the popular booktubers out there, like over 100,000. They do Brandon Sanderson content like crazy, and that still kind of drives the booktube community. I think is Brandon Sanderson because it is mostly younger than me. I get that. So with me, I said, I'm not going to do stuff just for clicks. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to talk about, Stephen King. I want to talk about stuff like Michael Crichton, which I know is niche. And it is tough sometimes when you've got an audience that at the moment is 60,000 strong and you get 2,000 views on a video. And I know some people, smaller booktube channels are like, whoa, I'd kill for 2,000 views. I understand that. Me, I'm just looking at it because I work in data. I'm like, well, but I got 60,000 people in my audience and only 2,000 want to watch that video. Obviously, I'm not doing something right, So there is that time where it's like, look, I want to talk about this. I want to talk. Like I'm going to keep doing my Stephen King videos. Like I just did a video about Dave Grohl and Foo Fighters, and I was like, I know no one's going to watch this, but it was something that I wanted to do. So, do that. Sometimes I'll take some risks, like when I did the horror stuff for a whole month. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't, But I do know that there are certain things that the audience wants me to do, and that's why I'll ask. I always say, what do you guys want me to talk about? I like to give the people what they want. That's why there's an overload of Wheel of Time content right now, because people have asked me to do it. I get that, but thankfully that's something I enjoy talking about as well. So it works out fine. But yeah, there are times where I'm like, okay, well, my views are really down. Maybe I should do something that people have been asking me for a while. Something that because I try not to do like top tens and stuff all the time. But, every once in a while I'll say, okay, I'll do it because people have been asking me for this for a while. So with me, really, it's listening to the audience. But I still think there's that room after you've got a little bit of channel growth to take a few risks and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to talk about Foo Fighters today and see what happens, So.
Was there a video idea that you've wanted to do that just haven't for whatever reason?
There was for a long time. I didn't want to talk about classic books because it was at that time when everyone was real heated about certain books, about how they're, they haven't aged well and stuff like that. And I'm real big about don't ban books like at all. So I was just like, I'm not going to talk about them at all if they're going to, just make people angry. Because that's one thing about me is I don't want to make people mad. I mean, I'm going to be honest with my opinions, but the last thing I want to do is just make people mad. So, things like Lovecraft and things like classic books that'll have a big target on their back right now. I was like, I don't want to talk about that, but I finally just said, these are things I love. I'm going to talk about them. And, I just kind of put like a disclaimer at the beginning. This might bother you, but, it's something I love. It's something I want to talk about. So, yeah, I think that's probably it. Talking about class. Anything really that came before like 2010 lately feels like it's hard to discuss at times. So
it is. Even some of the Dark Tower books I've been reading that, and there's some portions that I was like, well, I'm surprised there's not more of an uproar about this.
There's a lot more in some of those old Stephen King books like that than you'd think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my hands on the old version of this, the original version of The Stand, because I want to read the original version. It's been harder than I expected to find that
like
book.
not the uncut version, just like the original release. Yeah, see, I only read the uncut one, but I don't think I've ever seen the original in stores. So yeah, might be tougher to grab.
Yeah, I've been searching all the used bookstores and eBay. I think I'll have to go to eBay and get it, but I did have another question from Nakia's Hideaway, and also Yulene Reads, were kind of the same thing. It was, how do you balance your time with your job and with your family time and with the channel?
Very, very carefully. I guess, happy wife, happy life is all I'll say about that. But with me, I think it's just, I get a question a lot. How do you find time to do all this and then read too? I was like, I just, besides Discord, I don't really spend a lot of time on social media. You'd be surprised how much time that saves you, not scrolling Twitter all the time and getting mad about everything, scrolling Facebook and, being like, oh, well, they got a new dog, good for them, stuff like that. I use Instagram and Facebook like for marketing purposes for this. That's about it. So that saves a lot of time. And I don't watch a ton of TV outside of watching stuff with kids. I mean, I get all these, oh God, why haven't you watched this yet? I'm like, well, guys, do you want me to read and run this channel, or do you want me to go watch TV? Because I gotta make room for something. But yeah, you don't watch very much TV. You'd be surprised how much time per day you find on your hands. But as far as like this, really just on the weekends, I'll make sure I record 2 or 3 videos and then just edit them over during the course of the week and release them later. That's the best way that I found to do it. But I also, and this, I don't know if you know Moyd from Media Death Cult, when we talked, he was like blown away that I said, okay, if I'm in a day where I'm like, I gotta think of what video I'm going to make. I make it, I edit, I upload it. I can do it all in that day. And I know that he says that that's impossible. He can never do that. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just something I guess I'm okay at. So it's I think you have all those years of prep working in audio and video and stuff. It helps you quite a bit, but it's just a balance thing. I will have those days, where I am like, I feel bad. I feel like a bad dad because I'm in here doing this when my kids want to do something, but there is a balance there, I think. And I don't think that they feel neglected. So I'm still okay with it.
Yeah. Something you've mentioned recently, or over the course of the time I've been watching the channel, is you've been watching movies with your kids that you watched that were, I guess, R-rated or PG-13, and there was some people who were upset about that. And you had mentioned that people were upset, and I was surprised because I thought back to when I was in 9 or 10 years old watching RoboCop. Watch RoboCop now. That movie is. It's like, wow.
The thing is I was younger than my oldest kid right now when I saw it, and I'm still like, I don't think you're ready for that one yet. But yeah, well, it kind of just depends on what it is. Like, I mean, he was super interested in the Matrix, and I showed him that. My wife talked about it, and we're like, I can't think of anything in there. I was like, that was really that bad. But with us, it's just like, hey, watch some stuff that's got like people getting shot or something, something like that. Hey, this kind of depends on the kid, I think. But I mean, I was just. It's like in the 80s, man. We were watching like Friday the 13th when we were 6 and stuff, and Freddy. So we were kind of desensitized to all of it. So with them, it was just like, look, we start him slowly. And like, if he isn't going to be waking me up with bad dreams or nothing, I guess we're fine. So when he told me he wanted to watch It, the 1990 TV version of It, I was like, all right, well, this is the real test. And he's a champ about it. In fact, he loved it so much he went as Georgie for Halloween. So he's doing okay. There's this movie that just came out called 8-Bit Christmas. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
But it's a Neil Patrick Harris, Doogie, basically telling his daughter the story about how he got his 8-bit Nintendo. And there's a friend of his, he has it, is allowed to watch R-rated movies. So he's making all these like references to the kids that they don't get, like Yippee-ki-yay and stuff like that. And I'm like, that was me right there in the 80s. I knew all that stuff. And those kids are like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. So I think it really just depends on the kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll
Speaking of
always
the,
have people being like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that.
clutching pearls. Yeah. And speaking of the Matrix, what are your thoughts on the Matrix 4?
Hopeful. I doing that rewatch with him. I obviously the first one's still great. I still think 2 gets a lot more crap than it should. That was worthy sequel. Didn't touch the first one, but that third one was, man, it was painful. Then and now, watching it then and now, it's pretty painful. So I'm hoping it's like that Rocky Balboa did, where it kind of redeemed it after Rocky 5. So I'm hoping it's something like that.
Yeah, I hope so. It looks a little, I don't know. I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, I think the first trailer I was in, and these new trailers, I was like, I don't know. We'll see. Hey, you know what? We got HBO Max, so it's not going to cost us anything extra to watch it. So.
And speaking of HBO Max, I know something you had talked about in the past is streaming. Having movies on streaming services. What are your thoughts on that now with HBO Max and a movie like Dune that didn't make a ton of money in the theaters, but was on HBO Max at the same time, and it didn't get the attention that other movies get that are in the theater. So
It's
did it
kind of
hurt
a
its?
mixed bag, or double-edged sword rather, because I'm of that age now where I don't really like going to theaters that much anymore. I've paid for a really expensive TV and a sound system, so I don't mind watching the movies at home. And I don't have to worry about everybody live tweeting the movie while they watch it in the theater, because that does happen. And so I get it. That's awesome for people like me, or for people who are still feel unsafe to go out during all this stuff. I get that. That's great. But I do. I'm like, with a movie like Dune, I'm like, jeez, I'm seeing Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters movie, making more money than Dune. Just like that, just does not make sense to me, But I also think that's just like where audiences are right now. But with something like that, I think it depends if the investors and the studios do consider it being watched on HBO Max. The same thing as getting their $12 movie ticket, and that's probably a marquee price at this point. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's going to be the new way eventually, where it's theaters aren't going to go away, but stuff is going to be available on demand almost immediately, because I don't think they can just say, oh, well, piracy, because still such a small population still know how to do that, really, if we're being honest. So I think eventually that's just going to be the way, or maybe like a 2-week thing, like theaters get like a 2-week window, maybe. But the days of it's in the theater for 6 months before you get on home video, I think those days are gone. And I think Virus Shall Not Be Named kind of pushed it towards that.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I think I used to enjoy going to the theater, but now with cell phones and people talking, and it's not as fun as it used to be. And maybe I'm just an old curmudgeon, but
No, I'm with you. But if it is a big movie, I do like a movie that's going to be a visual feast, like Dune. Yeah, I will want to see that in the theater, or so sometimes for the experience. Like took my kid to go see Ghostbusters and stuff, because he's never asked us. He hadn't went to a movie theater in like 3 years now, so I was like, yeah, let's go. So, but, now he's like, now I want to go see Spider-Man. Now I want to go see that. All right, well, guess we're back into the movie theater thing again. All right.
Yeah, it's tough, and not only with the virus that should not be named, it's just all the distractions.
I used to call it that because we weren't allowed to say that word, and now I just continue to keep saying that because that's what people know it as. So,
isn't it funny? Yeah, and you had mentioned not spending time on social media and using Facebook and Instagram as marketing tools. Mm-hmm. Curious as from an analytics standpoint, because I've heard that it can actually hurt the algorithm if you use other social media platforms. What have you found? Is it beneficial to use other
Facebook, not so much. I haven't really seen it move very much, because you can look at that with Facebook. Not a ton. Occasionally with Facebook is someone will see it and they'll post it in like one of their groups or something like that, and that kind of helps bring some new eyes. But Instagram has helped significantly. I think when I first started doing that is when I first saw, it might have been a coincidence, but it was when I first saw, moving from that like 2,000 subs range to like 10,000, like almost over the course of like a month, because of using Instagram. And you'd be surprised how much. I mean, like I just lined up that interview with Jay Kristoff, and that's how I got in touch with him, was Instagram. So, I mean, you'd be surprised how much some creators actually use that, and some artists actually use that much more than something like Facebook or Twitter. So I'll say Instagram's helped a ton. Everything else, not so much. Even when I was still on Twitter, not really. I get people that would comment about the video but wouldn't watch it.
Is that
So
funny? Yeah.
yeah.
And you mentioned your interview with Jay Kristoff, and recently you had a few months ago, you had your interview with Joe Abercrombie.
Yeah.
How did that all come to be? What was that like for you?
Really wild with Joe Abercrombie is because when Trouble with Peace came out, that was book 2 in his most recent trilogy. He actually messaged me on Twitter and asked if I had gotten a copy. And I'm like blown away. Oh my God, it's like my favorite fantasy author contacting me to ask me if I got, an advanced copy of his book, because he had seen the stuff on YouTube, which was just awesome. And I asked him right after that if he would mind coming on the channel. He never responded. So I decided, okay, well, he's not interested. But when this new book was coming out, he actually emailed me and said, I heard through the grapevine you said that I don't want to be on your channel or something like that. I was like, what? Yeah. So it was a fun conversation, but it's really, really weird. I always say it's a weird thing about kind of like meeting your heroes or whatever, something like that. But he's one of the nicest guys I've dealt with. Super, super awesome gentleman, which is amazing when you consider the content that he writes. You imagine that some of these guys are kind of hard edged, but just super nice guy. But yeah, that was kind of a bucket list thing for me. I mean, like I said, it's my favorite modern fantasy author, and him contacting me saying, I know who you are, was just, a surreal moment.
Definitely. How did you prepare for that interview?
Well, I would say I'm not very good at the interview thing. I'm good at just holding a conversation like those talk about nothings I do, or we can just talk about whatever. But when it comes to like an author where I want to try to be professional and stuff, simple. I put on the community tab on YouTube, all the stuff, and just say, hey, I'm gonna be talking to this author. Do you guys have any questions you'd like me to ask them? And I sell it as, this is your opportunity to ask an author, a question that you might never get another chance to. But the truth is, guys, I just can't think of questions. I think with Joe Abercrombie, I always said I felt like I'd be like Chris Farley when he had Paul McCartney on SNL, where he's like, hey, remember when you were in the Beatles? That was awesome. That's what it would be like with Joe Abercrombie. Hey, you remember when you wrote the Blade itself? You'd be like, yeah, that was cool. That's what it would have been like without their help. So I'm always happy to have other people provide those questions for me. So it's not just, hey, what's your favorite book? What book influenced you? Tell me about this next book you're writing that you can't tell me anything about, so.
I think it's funny that you mentioned about Joe Abercrombie being a nice guy, and you wouldn't expect that from his books and material. It's the same thing with horror authors. I've noticed that are people in horror that are just the nicest people. They write these terrible books that kind of make you want to lose your lunch, and then they're just the nicest people.
Guess you can't judge an author by his books, huh? Or her books.
Yeah, definitely. I did have a question submitted by Taylor Moe. His question was, is there a specific feeling or combination of things that you were still waiting to discover in books you've read?
Is there a certain feeling I'm still waiting to discover in books that I've read?
Yeah, or what would be, what would be the perfect book for you in your eyes?
I mean, I love me some coming of age, really a coming of age story. Maybe throw a little frights in there, but I'm not much of a sadist, to the point where I'm like, oh, I don't like a happy ending. I think that like you look at Stephen King, for example, he gets so much crap about his endings. I'm like, well, I mean, it's not fair for that guy. He writes a happy ending and it's too Disney. He writes a down ending and, oh, it was way too morbid. And he writes an ambiguous ending and, oh, well, I got to have something better than that, So I think it really just kind of depends on the person. But for me, like I said, I love the coming of age subgenre. It's great. But fantasy, sci-fi, horror, I'm not really one of those that's like, oh, it has to be fantasy. Like a lot of my viewers are, it has to be fantasy or they're not hearing it. Not really consider myself bound to that genre. Just if it's a coming of age story, I'm usually pretty much into it. I just love that authors that can write that leap from childhood to adulthood and do it really, really well. That's why I've become such a big Stephen King fan. So I don't know about like if the book that I'm waiting for it to give me like a feeling or something like that. But if every book could make me feel something like It or The Stand made me feel or something like that, then I mean, I guess that's what I would go with, because those are just like those stories that you just look at and you say, oh my God, they're so monstrous. That's what everybody else says. And I'm like, it could still be going and I'd be happy with it. I didn't ever want it to end, even though it was 1,200 pages. So I guess a book that can give me that kind of feeling like that just has characters you don't want to say goodbye to.
And with, you mentioned coming of age stories, are there certain tropes that you that you love, or certain ones that you don't enjoy as much?
I think it's got to be for like each genre. I mean, like with fantasy, I know a lot of people hate like the Farm Boy Leaves Home. I love it. I'll never get tired of that. I'll never get tired of that. I'll never get tired of a Dark Lord. You know, I mean, I've cut my teeth on Tolkien, so I'm never going to be against that kind of stuff. I know that a lot of people like to call those tropes now, but I'm like, I mean, those tropes are why I love fantasy. You know, I don't like it when modern authors try to do it and act like they're reinventing the wheel. You know, I'm not going to mention any names, but I have no problems with those tropes. Like, I mean, a lot of people told me they tried getting into the John Gwynn books that I recommend a lot, and they said, "Oh, it's just a lot of tropes and stuff." I'm like, well, I feel like he's doing them right, I guess, because they didn't really bother me at all. But yeah, that's something I'll never really get sick of. Is, you know, good old Farm Boy Leaves Home or Stranger Comes to Town.
Is there a trope that you just don't enjoy, that you just kind of, not for me?
I don't enjoy male fantasy authors trying to write sex scenes. That drives me crazy. It's just so rough to read sometimes. It's just painful. And I'm like, bro, this is not your forte. And I know I've read Harlequin romance novels on the channel. So that's a long story. Not really. I lost a bet with my wife, and she said that I had to read one of her Harlequin romance novels on the air. And I did. That was a long time ago. That could have torpedoed the channel. So I lucked out.
Yeah. Don't make that bet again.
No, do not make bets with your wife. You'll lose, and she will make you pay up.
Yeah, they don't forget. And there's been a lot of debate lately about star ratings and the system of star ratings. What are your thoughts on that?
I used to do it, and then I realized on Goodreads that like all anybody cared about was a star rating. They didn't actually read the review that I read or listen to the review that I recorded. And I didn't like that they would like compare things. Oh, you gave this book 4 stars, but you only gave this one 3. That means you think it's better. And I'm like, and the biggest thing is they got mad that I almost never gave anything 5. For me, I was like, 5 needs to be special. I know you guys hand out 5 stars like it's nothing. For me, it has to be a book I'm going to be thinking about the rest of my days, you know? So that upset a lot of people. So I stopped doing it on Goodreads. I just, you know, watch my review if you want to know how I feel about it, and I'll tell you if I think you should read it or not. So I'm glad that other people still get a kick out of it. But I think with Goodreads, if they just moved it to an out of 10 rating, I think that would help a lot. Yeah. I really do. Or even put in half stars.
Have you ever read a book that you just didn't enjoy and you worried about the author watching the review, or kind of looking to see what is Mike going to think about my book, and you have to crush that person's dreams?
I'm like, okay, I know some of these bigger, like I'm notorious for not caring for Name of the Wind. And I did like a rant video about why I just don't, it's got to be a me thing. I clearly just didn't get it. And I wasn't worried about that. I don't think Patrick Rothfuss would care if some dude on YouTube didn't like his books. You know, I think those bigger authors, they don't care. They probably don't even listen to that kind of stuff. But when it is a somewhat smaller author, I am kind of nervous about it. Like I read The Hunger by Alma Katsu last year, and I did not like it at all. And I was like, well, I don't even want to review this because I don't like to do negative reviews. You know, I really don't. I'd like to try to stay positive on the channel. And even though I was as positive as I could be in that, I was just like, I don't want to just bring this lady down who's, you know, moderately successful, but she's not like a household name or anything like that. So I felt sick about making that review. And I think it was the nicest way I could say that I did not like this book. And that's about the only time I think I've ever had. And the only way I did it was because it was in that horror month where I had already listed everything I was going to review for the theme, or else I just wouldn't have done it. So yeah, it's rough. And that's honestly, and I know that a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know why you don't do that. Is I say I'm not really reviewing independent authors, and it's not because I'm like, oh, I don't want you to use me as your launching pad. It's not that. I love to give small authors a boost. That's why I mention them in my book hauls and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to review them because if I'm negative on it, man, I'm going to feel terrible. But I'm going to feel like I'm ruining your dream, you know? So I try to stay away from it, but I'll always, you know, give someone a shout out or something like that. Anything I can do to help.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm a small channel, but I get a ton of ebook and ARC offers from authors that are wanting to get their book out there. And I'm a nobody, so I'm assuming that you get a ton of those kind of requests. How do you handle all
man,
those?
I think 4 or 5 times a day I get an email asking me, and I just, you know, I don't want to say I'm at the point where I need to get like an auto response, but I mean, I do have like a I'll copy and paste, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to send it to me, I can give you a shout out when I do my book hauls, but I really don't have time. It's not just that I don't want to or nothing like that. I just really don't have time because I try to explain to people, do you realize how many recommendations I get to read like AAA big time authors and that I haven't gotten to yet? And people that freak out when they say, oh my God, you haven't read Tad Williams yet, or things like that. Because of things like this, I really don't have the time to fit that stuff. If I wasn't doing this channel, sure. But at this point, I'm like, people weren't really interested in hearing me talk about Dave Grohl, a very popular musician. I'm pretty sure they're not really interested in hearing me talk about Bob, the science teacher who wrote his first, YA vampire novel. So it's not like a disrespectful thing. It's a thing that's like, I don't think that that's what my audience is looking for.
Interesting. Yeah. And
once I gave my PO box, they just show up now.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't it? I think it's so weird that book hauls are so popular that it's just
it is.
somebody.
It is. I mean, and I was just talking about this the other day. I was like, I will do a book review and I will think this is one of the best reviews I've done in a long time, and it gets 3,000 views. I'm like, okay, well, okay, maybe people weren't just really feeling it. And then I'll do like what I'm going to read, and it's like 10,000 views in the first day. It's like, what the world? So people are more interested in what I'm going to read than what I just finished reading, I think, sometimes. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And like I said, I try not to make too many of those clickbaity kind of videos, but I really will always do the book haul because people are sending stuff to me. I want to say thank you, to them publicly like that. So I'll always kind of do that. But, I got the TBR down to just once a season, things like that. I try not to do too many of those top 10s and stuff. But I mean, not gonna lie, people love them, and they would probably like it if I did nothing but those, but I don't know. I have too much creativity, I think, to stuff that I'm never going to be able to get enough time to do all the stuff that I want, that I've got ideas for, to just do stuff too much like that. But like I said, people have been asking for it for a while. I'll go ahead and do it.
How far ahead are you scheduling your TBR? How far ahead are you?
Well, I think what is because I'm in this Malazan read along, I've structured everything around that. So right now, it's pretty hard all the way until June. But here's the thing: is I'll tell people, look, I worked in risk analysis, and we scheduled everything 12 to 15 months in advance. So I would always have my TBRs planned out for 12 to 15 months, but loose. I could take stuff off, add stuff on, or whatever. Now I keep doing this stupid thing where I keep committing myself to read-alongs on the Discord, and that stuff's making it very, very hard to not be writing stuff down as I put in permanent ink. So, but right now I'm scheduled all the way through June because that's when the Malazan read along ends, and then it's like free for all. I'm going back to what I feel like reading that. I'm going to read that.
If you can go back to last year, to 2019, or over a year ago, and before you announced the Malazan read along, if you could, what would you change about that? What would you do differently?
I think I'd do like I'm doing with Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Hey, we're reading this book this month. If you want to join, you can. Or the Michael Crichton one where I'm like, what? We're kind of backed up this month. We're going to move this one back a month. Things like that instead of, because the thing with a series that long and a series that difficult is, it started huge and it's just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Like that's a series that has a high tap out rate. And I think what it was, I was just trying to look for, honestly, I think I was trying to look for that Wheel of Time experience again, because that Wheel of Time experience was just such a fun time in my life, honestly, with just how much people I had to interact with me while I was doing that the first time. And I think I might have picked a series that was just a little too challenging because it's a tough one. I mean, I love it. I do, but it's not for everyone. Whereas I think Wheel of Time is approachable for just about anyone, really. So I guess if I could change anything, I would just kind of not necessarily, pick a different series, but maybe pick a different format, the different scheduling or something like that.
I think it was ambitious. So I think it was great that you tried it.
It brought a lot of new people to the channel, but there's a lot of them are like, yeah, this is too much for me. So, and I get it.
I was one of those people. I think I was new to reading fantasy, and I just got into the moon. I was enjoying it, but I was just lost. I just couldn't.
I wish I could tell you that gets better, but it gets tougher. It gets tougher. Like I'm in book 7 right now, and I'm like 100 pages in. I'm already like, woo, yeah. So book number 7.
Yeah, it's a long series. I'm gonna try it again. I'm gonna give it another shot. But yeah,
have you read Wheel of Time yet?
I haven't.
think that would be a really good one. I tell people once you finish Wheel of Time, then I feel like you're ready to kind of get your masters, so to speak, which is what Malazan is. But yeah, people that were like, I've never read fantasy before. Can I join you on this? I'm like, well, I don't know, because it's different. It's definitely the most unique fantasy series I've ever read.
It is different. Yeah, it is different. And speaking of different, you'd mentioned you wanted to read House of Leaves. It was on your list of books.
Yeah, next October. It's one that I think I wanted to get to this year, but we had scheduled again in the middle of this trying to do a themed month. I did this year. I did spooky season. At the same time, I was doing a Malazan book. It was like, all right, well, I'm not going to be able to, because House of Leaves looks like that kind of book. I'm just going to want to take my time and really just sink myself into, because it looks very immersive.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, next year I don't have any Halloween plans except that. I mean, I'm sure I'll end up doing more, but yeah, that's what I'm finally going to do. I want to give it the attention I think it deserves, and that's just such a, I don't want to say a divisive book, because it seems like divisive is usually like 50-50, whereas I feel like this feels like it's about like 80-20 really like it, but that 20% really don't like it. So I'm interested to see how it goes. I mean, I'm very enamored with just the ideas of this, like having to hold up the mirror and things like that and looking for clues while you read. That just sounds, for someone like me that's still an eyes only read guy, I don't audio. I think that sounds just great. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's an experience. We read it in October, and take your time with it for sure.
Did you have a group along with you?
I did. Yeah, we had a discussion, and we had a few people drop out because they just couldn't handle it. They just couldn't do it. But
I bet those discussions were wild, huh?
They were. We talked for like 2 hours, and we still had more that we could talk about. But there's an appendix in the back of the book, because it's a 700-page book, and there's like 150 pages of an appendix and extra stuff. But all that stuff is really thick. It's really dense. So there's messages you can just like you can decode, and it's wild. That book is an experience. You go from really loving it to really hating it. But at the end, I looked at the whole experience and thought, this is pretty good. This is amazing.
Well, I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, it took me a while to get the kind of into the groove of reading it, because it's a really different reading experience. But once you kind of got into a rhythm with it, it really opened up.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be great.
It's different.
This for me, for one thing, just to know, which side of that 80-20 I land on.
I'm curious to see. I think you'll enjoy it, but we'll see. Now, I was wondering, do you have any tips for? And you've done videos on this before, but do you have any tips for smaller, medium booktubers and just people wanting to start out?
I think so. And I try not to do videos like that too often, because I don't want people getting the feeling that I'm like, oh, I've made it. I mean, like I'm moderately successful. I'm not one of these quit your day job type of YouTubers, So what I tell people, what worked for me, is I minored in marketing in business school. So I applied a lot of that stuff to it. And what I tell people, obviously rule number one is stay on brand. I just said, hey, look, I did a Foo Fighters video when I'm a book channel, but you know what? I did review the book in the first half of that video. So here we go. But stay on brand. You're a book channel, be a book channel. No one wants to hear you rant about, what's going on in politics or what happened on The Bachelor today. No one wants to hear that. They want to hear you talk about books. And because I think it's an escape for a lot of people to, get out of that real world stuff. And they just want to, talk about some books. So I said I was going to stay on brand. I was going to talk to my audience, not at them. That was a big thing for me. I wanted them to feel like they're sitting across. And I get this comment a lot. I feel like I'm just, hanging out with a friend. That's that's the approach I was going for. And just be yourself. Don't try to copy someone else's channel, because look, I'm not gonna lie. I see people copying my content, copying my format, all that stuff. And you know what? I'm flattered. I think it's great. I'm just glad they can't talk better than me, or else, I'd be out of business. But I'm flattered by it. But I'm telling people a lot. Your viewers know if you're aping someone else's channel. Like I see so many people come out, they try to be exactly like Daniel Green, and then they don't know why they don't work. And I'm like, because they've already got Daniel Green. They don't need another Daniel Green. They've got the real one. Why do they need you? So I think just try to establish, I don't even want to say be yourself, because I know some people do play a character on their things, and they've done very, very well. So I'm not saying that, but saying, be your own creator. Don't try to just copy everybody else's kind of material. That's the best thing. And just engage with your audience, respond to every comment. When I first started, that was my goal. I'm going to respond to every comment, even if it's negative. I'm going to respond to it, and I respond positively. At least I think I do. I've gotten kind of snarky a few times. Some people after repeat offenses, I've been known to get snarky before I've had my coffee. It happens a little bit, but I always say, hey, fill people with kindness. And they don't know what to do. It's disarming. But engage with your audience 100%. For the longest time, I didn't even have a Discord until, basically they bullied me into it. But engage with your audience. And again, always just try to, come up with your own ideas. I think that's always the best thing. But listen to them. They have criticism, listen to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're being malicious. Like when I started the channel, I had an intro that was like a minute long. And I didn't even know, people aren't going to want to watch that every single time. And they say, hey, guy, the intro is way too long. And at first I was like, my video is an hour long, and that minute-long video is minute-long intro is bothering. I'm like, no, actually what he's saying made a lot of sense, So I still, to this day, I'll listen to, constructive criticism, but is it just, over the top mean? They're trying to help you, and I think that listening to them really does make a difference.
Have you ever gotten a negative comment that you took as a compliment? It was meant to be a negative comment that you took. Well, that's a good thanks.
Yeah, I probably have. I can't think of an instance though, but I will get one constantly where I'm like, I don't know if that was an insult or not. Like for example, I recorded my Empire of the Vampire review today, like I said, and I said I hear terms that some younger booktubers use, like edgelord, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. So I mean, there's a generation gap there. I don't know some of these words and things like that. I don't know what that means. Someone says like, "You're so ratchet." I had to look up what that meant. I was like, "Was that good or bad?" I had no idea. So I think there's that age gap there. My kids are 9 and 6, so they're not really giving me what the lingo the kids are using these days. Just the really young kids. So it's a learning experience. But yeah, I do have comments sometimes where I'm like, I don't know if that's good or bad, but. Oh, you have someone will be like, man, you read too fast. And I'm like, that's not an insult to me. I think I read just the right speed for me,
What is ratchet? What does that mean?
Still not sure. I think you have like an annoying voice or something like that. But it's what I tell people about negative comments is 99% of my comments are overly positive. And, once you get over about 10,000 subscribers, you're going to start getting some people who are just there to be mean. It's fine. You accept that, but it is what it is.
Were you surprised with the success your channel's had?
Yeah, big time. Like I said, I just started this out after I podcasted for almost a decade and no one listened, so it was really just something I did for me. Sorry. Something I really just did for me to have some adult conversation. Because, I mean, you have kids, you probably know when you first have kids, guys, you feel like your entire personal life just died because everything in your life is about your kids at that point. And after a while, you're like, holy hell, do I need some adult conversation? So I, got with a friend and we started doing podcasts and stuff like that. And then with this, I went back to school full time and I was doing that online. And so my wife went back to work and I stayed home with the kids and did that. And I was like, I need something to get these things out. And honestly, I knew no one in real life that read the books I read. So that was the whole reason I started doing this. So I could find other people to talk to about these things. But it's been something.
Have you ever been recognized in public and say, hey, you're Mike?
One time at, here's the thing is like think of you, my wife laughs at me because I say this, I say I'm bigger around the world than I am in the state. Cause I'll look at the analytics and I'll say like, look, the States, I've only got 48% of my viewers. The rest of them are worldwide. So, but, I don't know about just like locally, but one time about 3 or 4 months ago, I was in the grocery store and someone said, hey, Mike, how's the channel going? And it was no one that I knew. So I was like, that's neat, I guess. But yeah. But I know I was talking to Brian Lee Durfee. He's got his own booktube channel and he's an published author. But he was telling me if you and I went to a convention, more people would recognize you than recognize me. So I was like, oh, that's neat. So I think as long as they don't want to punch me in the face or anything, that's really neat.
You're ratchet and they want to fight you. Yeah. I did have a comment from John. He's his channel is Hey Y'all Listen Up. He wanted to say thank you because your channel has inspired both of us to start our own channels. So
that's awesome. I never get tired of hearing that. I mean, look, guys, I don't do this for ad revenue. It's really not much as you guys think it is. I do this because I love to talk about books and I love to get more people reading. Like my biggest thing when it started was like, God, you just look at the stats. And I was like, there's less and less people especially in the States, reading every single year. So I was like, what can I do to encourage people to read more? Because I felt like I'd run into nothing but people that had that attitude of, oh, they're making this movie, or they're making or you should read this book. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll wait for the movie. They kind of gotten like that. And I was like, well, how do we get away from that? How do we get people like, I want to read that before it comes out? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I went to. So when I get emails, messages, anything like that, hey, you reawaken my love for reading. That's awesome. That's the best thing I can possibly hear. And people think, oh, I don't want to bother you. Not bother me, man. That's what I'm here for. I love to hear stuff like that. And yeah, people saying I encourage them to start their channels even more because it takes, I mean, let's be honest, most book readers are kind of introverts, so it takes a ton of testicular fortitude to get in front of the camera and do this, right? Especially how mean everyone is on the internet. It's hard to put your face out there. So yeah, if I've given anybody the courage to do that, man, that's mission accomplished,
Yeah. Is that weird when people tell you that? Like, when people tell you things like that? Does it ever get you in the feels?
I mean, look, they'll probably like, oh, Mike, you look tired. And I'm like, that's just the way I look, guys. I'm 43 years old. I got 2 kids. I've got a full-time job, and I stay up too late reading books and doing this. Yeah, I got some luggage under the eyes. That's just the way that I look now. You'll look that way someday too. So I try not to let it bother me at all, But I mean, most mean comments, I honestly do just laugh at. I mean, I know I did make a video today going off on someone who made a really shitty comment to me about my Wheel of Time fandom. And look, within reason, I do have peeves. And one of my peeves is telling someone that they can't be a fan of something because they don't feel the way you do about it. That drives me up a wall, So yeah, I will. Maybe I shouldn't respond, but I will respond about stuff like that sometimes. But yeah, just like, oh yeah, you got terrible hair. You think I don't know this shit? Yeah, I know. What do you want me to do about it? Does that change what I'm saying? Does that change the words that I'm telling you about this book? No, I don't think that it does.
Yeah. It's crazy. And with fandoms, I think fandom's really interesting because you can, especially with movies and with comic book movies, it seems like there's these fandoms that there's this MCU against the DCE or whatever. And these people become really invested and become part of their identity, almost like a religion. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think causes that?
That was a big thing about when I started this, is where I said, I want us to feel like this is a place where I can give my opinion. And if you disagree, you can drop in the comments and we can talk about it and we can still be pals after, because I feel like we've really gotten away from that. Everything was, if you don't agree with my opinion, you're toxic and you should be canceled and you're wrong and you should be shot. And it was just like, we're talking about freaking Iron Man here. And all of a sudden you should be shot. I was like, are you kidding me? This is the kind of stuff I talked about when I was a kid and got called a dork. And now you guys are like fighting over this. It was crazy because we did that podcast for so long and it was just a media podcast. And that right, I think after the Star Wars, when The Last Jedi came out, that was when it just really hit a boiling point. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's like all anybody does is fight about everything now. Every casting was a shitstorm. I mean, every single casting. And it got to a point where I was like, it's just not fun to talk about anymore. So that's why I was like, I want to go into a bubble and just talk about books again. That's all I want to talk about. But yeah, I'm real big about, I don't have brand loyalty. We got a Nintendo Switch here. We got an Xbox. We got a PlayStation here. We don't care about all that. They ain't paying my bills. I don't have stock in any of these companies. So I always think, again, I'm a marketing minor. So this is a big thing for me is when these companies have strong, healthy competition, the consumer wins. So I want all of these things to be great. I want Wheel of Time to be good. I want Witcher to be good. That way they keep raising the stakes on each other, making sure they have the best fantasy show. That's the kind of way that I am. I'm never the type of, I'm ride or die with this. I mean, I'm ride or die with my family. That's about it. Everything else, like, look, yeah, I mean, there's people that are important to me and I'm always going to defend them. But when it comes to like brands and content, I don't care. I want all the good things. I don't choose. They just don't work for me.
Yeah, it's really strange that people get really so invested in something like that. And I think we grew up around the same time. I remember in the 90s, the big thing was accepting everyone. That was the big thing for me, that growing up is be accepting and accept everyone and be supportive and, talk things through. And it seems like now it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. Like I'll see booktube channels. They're like, well, if you think this, I don't want you here anyway. And I'm like, man, anyone is welcome on my channel. Anyone. I don't care what you believe. If you love reading, you're welcome here, man. And if you're interested in getting back into reading, you're welcome here. And if you just, want to make fun of my face, I guess you're welcome here, but I wanted to have that environment where it's like, I don't care what you think in your personal beliefs. You love to talk about the Lord of the Rings, man. I'm here to talk to you about Lord of the Rings. I could care less about any of that other stuff. So yeah, I don't know where that attitude's come from in the last few years.
Yeah, it's terrible. And the one thing I've always enjoyed about your channel is you've always kept it free of politics, and
Yeah,
whatever side you're on, or it's really like you said, it's an escape.
that to me was, like I said, real big stay on brand thing. And that's the first thing they teach you in business school, man, is you got a product and that's a product that people want. Don't change it with your personal ideals. It's a really big thing they teach. Stay on brand always. And I was like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, all politics is going to do is piss off someone. I was like, I mean, I don't like to use that line of, oh, we're more divided than we've ever been, because I think it's been like this for a long, long time, guys. Wait, I mean, ask our presidents about the 60s, or ask our parents about the 60s, it was just like this for them. So with me, it was like, you're always going to end up pissing off at least half of your audience statistically. And I was like, why do that, for something that doesn't matter in the end? Me talking about Red Rising, no one cares about what I think about what's going on in the realm of politics right now. So yeah, I'm never going to touch that stuff. And honestly, I'm so unplugged from it. I don't really follow it. And apparently that upsets people when I say I don't really follow it either. And it's just like, I don't know, what I hear from my wife is pretty much all I need to know about it, I guess, so.
Yeah, I remember that. It was, I think, last year that there was a big you had made a comment about it, and I was like, I'm surprised people are upset about that. You would think they would enjoy just somewhere to get away from all that, but I think it's some people just like to be upset a lot, I guess.
Yeah, they want you to. Well, I think the thing I get a lot is, you have a big platform, so it's your social responsibility. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not a politician. It's not my responsibility to do any of that stuff. So, if you feel like that's a reason you got to bounce, I mean, peace be with you. I guess I have no idea what to say. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I've got a channel just to talk about books, and that's what I'm going to do. Except my once a month when I do my off the books thing. That's it.
Yeah. And I've read that, I've read somewhere that people stop looking for new music at a certain age. They just stop, they kind of listen to what they've listened to forever and they're happy with it. They don't seek out new bands. Do you seek out new artists to listen to?
Not as much as I used to. I think while I can't audiobook really, because I have like this ADD thing when it comes to listening, and that just comes from years of blocking out your kids, and you just can't turn that off. I will still listen to a lot of podcasts about like rock bands and stuff. Like Eddie Trunk will have like interviews, or Joe Rogan things. I mean, honestly, guys, I base my talk about nothing off Joe Rogan podcast, where I was like, I love that he could just have anybody come in, no topic at all, and they can talk for 3 hours. And I said, I want to do that. So that's why I started doing that. But I'll listen more to like podcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes to music, I'm pretty much, I think around like 2010 or so is where I kind of like cut off, except for a few bands. Like obviously I'm still a big Foo Fighters fan. There are a few bands that I still follow, like their new releases. But even I start looking at that and I'm like, yeah, but it's mostly bands that have been out while I was still really into the music scene and stuff. So I wouldn't say not really, but if I do, it's usually like, hey, it's just one like band from the 70s or something that I never really got into, and I want to learn more about them, than it is hey, what's on the radio station right now? Let me see if I can get into that. Because no, then I turn into my parents and I think everything on the radio sucks. And I think I realized when it happened for me around like 2010 or 11, my wife was watching the American Music Awards, and I realized, oh my God, my parents, I'm bitching about every single band that just came on the stage. And I was like, guess time's up for me. It's back to just listen to the iPod. Yeah.
I think about that too. And I wonder if it's, because everyone thinks the last generation was the best generation.
And everyone thinks the current generation's music sucks. Yes. Yeah. Everyone thinks that the previous generations, all like that's all on my Discord during the Super Bowl. And the younger people were like, "Oh, never get tiring watching you old people complain about new music." And I'm like, our parents did to us too. It's like, and you'll do it with your kids one day. It's normal.
Yeah, I'm already doing it. And it's like, what is this? What's on this playlist? Yeah, I try and stop myself because I think back to when it was done to us. But I think back and say, well, it's different because this isn't the music is so manufactured. It's all done through Pro Tools or whatever.
Yeah.
And I try to stop myself.
Like, where's the guitar solo? And they're like, what? Yeah.
The guitar. Yeah, just copy paste your solo. So
what I do with my kids is I'll introduce them to stuff slowly. I don't want to force any of this stuff on them. So I mean, I've been playing like the Beatles since they were kids and stuff like that to kind of just get them used to it. Good thing about that is a lot of these like Pixar and DreamWorks movies, stuff like that, they use a lot of classic music in it, I think, and stuff. So, they know the Eagles, they know Led Zeppelin, they know the Beatles, stuff like that. But, they also have like their own stuff that I want to let them have, even though I'm listening. I'm like, oh my God, So thankfully, unlike our generation, they're not blasting speakers. They just have it in their headphones now. So I'm like, well, that's cool.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. My daughter asked us for a Jeff Buckley album. So I was like, oh, well, I'm not doing too bad, I guess. Yeah.
I think my kids more are into, believe it or not, YouTube. They love watching like YouTube and Twitch gamers like yell at their games and stuff. It drives my wife nuts listening to people scream at video games. But I'm like, look, I'd rather be doing that than what I was doing, like trying to look between the lines on the Playboy channel when I was, a kid, because the channel was all scrambled. I'd much rather you be listening to some dude yell at Minecraft mods than what I was doing. So I'll take that.
Yeah, it is kind of strange though that they enjoy watching someone else play the game. And I used to ask them, "You have this game. Why don't you just play it yourself? Why do you not watch someone else play?" But that's one of those things.
And I think that oh, cool. So you want to watch me play a game? No. As soon as I start playing the game, I'm like, let me try. So I'm like, all right. So apparently you have to be a stranger on the internet to watch someone else play a game. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. You have to be entertaining, I guess, when you're playing the game and like to yell and scream.
It's great though as a parent because they could be playing like old school Nintendo and they're like, this game's impossible. And then you get to walk in there like some kind of superhero and kick the game's ass, and they just can't handle it. He's so mad over the summer a couple years ago. He's playing Mega Man 2. I got him the Mega Man collection. I'm playing Mega Man 2 from the old NES, and he's just getting creamed. And he's like, this game's impossible. And he's like throwing the controller, brought back memories. And so I go in there and just like kick the game. It's like muscle memory. I played that game like 400 times when I was a kid. He was so mad. And I was like, yeah. Dunking on your kids, guys. It never gets old.
It never does. Yeah.
Get good, noob.
Yeah. And it's this whole nostalgia thing with even the kids now even want to play older games like Mega Man 2. That's really with all the technology and all the new games and all the new engine, software. It seems weird to me that they want to go back and play what we were playing.
I think what really brought it in is that they got away from like the consoles and they've gotten so into tablet games. Tablet games look like our old NES or Super Nintendo games now. Yeah. So it's like, it was an easy transition. So I got them Nintendo Online, where you can play nothing but Nintendo and Super Nintendo games. And they play that more than they play the actual Switch games now. So I'm like, all right. I think the tablet games really brought that forward.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look for a silver lining for all the stupid microtransactions they buy.
Oh man, isn't that amazing how much money they make with?
I was like, so I told him you got to learn this lesson on your own. You got a $25 gift card from your grandma for your birthday for iTunes. Use it however you want. And he spends all in one day on like gun skins and stuff. I'm like, you just wasted your money. But he's happy. So I'm like, all right, you got to learn on your own.
And speaking of microtransactions and digital, are you a fan of? And we're you're gonna sound like get off my lawn, kids, but. Are you a fan of physical media, or are you?
I mean, you see my bookshelf.
Yeah.
You've seen my bookshelf, so yeah, I'm a fan. But I will still buy books on Kindle as well, just because I think it's. I really do prefer reading in bed with a Kindle now because I am the type that will read until I fall asleep. And if you've ever been reading like a Brandon Sanderson or a Stephen King book and that book falls on your face, yeah, that's why I said my latest Kindle video: don't smash your face, get a Kindle. I think that was the number one reason, but. Here's my thing with it. I understand how business works. Again, business school graduate, I get it. If people are paying it, you charge that. But I'm still like, why are digital books the same price as a physical book? You get nothing. It costs you nothing to reproduce. But again, hey, Jeff Bezos, if people are paying it, I understand. Hey, that's why you're the richest man in the world. I get it. But with like video games, to me, it's like, why am I going to buy the digital version when I can get the physical version for the same price? And if I don't like the game, I can go sell it,
Yeah,
or give it to
exactly.
someone else, So I don't know. I'm kind of iffy on that, but I have finally gotten to the point where I mostly will buy my music digital at this point, unless it's a band that like I've just collected like their entire catalog or something, like a new Iron Maiden album or something. Okay, I got to get that because I've got all their other ones, But I don't think there's ever gonna be a time when my kids are like, oh, Dad passed away and he left me a CD collection. I don't think they're ever going to care about that. So yeah, I finally moved on to digital music.
Are you a fan of vinyl? I know vinyl is kind of it seems like it's always making a comeback, but
I think it's great and it's vintage. And I do like that it does have that cool sound to it. Takes me back to, even though it was pretty much out of it when I was a kid, but my parents still had some laying around. I mean, that's how I discovered the Beatles, was listening on vinyl and stuff like that. But I don't own a single one. And I don't even own a turntable anymore. But I think that's a really cool collecting thing to have because every time I go into like a half price books, which is a bookstore we have out here, I don't know if you have it, But they do also they'll take trade-ins from movies, music, books, everything. And I will always times find myself going to flipping through the vinyls just because they look cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want another collecting habit. I've got enough of them.
Yeah. What else do you collect?
Oh, well, I mean, just mostly just books at this point. But I've got the point now where I'm like, okay, well, I need the physical and the digital version of the book. You know,
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
one that I think that I'll read again, yeah, or like I said, I'm reading a lot while I'm in bed. Like, look at these. Do you know how hard it is to read a mass market paperback that's this big? So yeah, I got the Malazan books on digital too, because sometimes I'm like, all right, I don't feel like holding this anymore. I'm getting a hand cramp, you know, because it's massive. So.
Yeah, it is. You know, those are big, and you know, I hear a lot of people say, well, when you have a book haul or you have a big collection, people get angry with, well, you're contributing to, you're a consumer and you're buying all these books, you should be saving the trees or whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
Get over it. That's what I say. It's like I'm showing you like hair I'm collecting from victims or something. I mean, these are books. You know, I'll always have a fondness for books. I always have. I still prefer, if I've got the option, to read from a physical book. So if that's a video that's going to get you angry, I think you might need to get a hobby and find something that's going to relax you a little bit. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, part of me respects the minimalist, approach to living in general, but it's not for me because I like to collect things and I end up with a bunch of crap that I may never read again. But it's nice to have. It makes me feel good.
Sure. And then, you know what? It makes you look distinguished. You know, someone walks and sees like all these books, like, wow, this guy's smart. He reads.
Yeah, he must be really smart. Yeah. And do you have any a favorite live show that you've seen, a live band?
Oh man, let's see. I've seen Metallica like 7 times.
Oh wow.
I think there's probably a modern rock band. You want to call them modern anymore? They're pretty vintage at this point. But the band that could always just lay their stuff down live and just, even if it's like the later years of Metallica where people didn't like their albums anymore, whatever, their live shows were still incredible. They always were. Kiss is obviously, I mean, they're the biggest band in the world, for a long time because their live shows were so amazing. But I finally got to see Iron Maiden right before the virus hit. And that was like a bucket list one for me because I'd never seen them live. And it's amazing that they still sound so great at their age. A lot of those bands, like I love Judas Priest and I listen to them now. I'm like, yeah, that's still my guys, but man, they can't put down like they used to anymore. They're like 80, But so, but yeah, it's mostly old hair bands, metal bands, stuff like that, Megadeth, things like that. But I think that outside of that, I mean, I saw Paul McCartney in like early 2000s. Figured that was the closest I'll ever get to seeing the Beatles. But I don't really go too many live shows anymore, just because you know how it is. The older you get, the less you like people.
Yeah, especially now. We went to see Dave Matthews Band about a month ago, and we had to. It was almost like going into an airport because we had to have our vaccination cards. We had to empty our pockets, and they had to do the whole thing, and it was just a hassle just to get in the gates. But yeah, it's a little annoying that I'd rather just stay at home and watch it. Watch it.
Like Tool is coming through here, and I was tempted to go to that, but I was just like, I don't know. Right now, I'm hesitant to buy tickets for anything because you never know. One day they're just going to cancel everything again. So I'm the type that's like, you know what? I'm good watching the 4K broadcast on YouTube these days. Yeah. I've reached that age, So.
Tool is pretty good live though.
Yeah, I've seen him years ago, but yeah, wouldn't mind seeing him again.
Not too bad. Pretty good. There is something I think that was lost with all the digital music, and I think now bands focus on singles instead of albums. So the art of an album, of constructing an album, is almost like a dead.
Same with the music video. Yeah, like music video is pretty much pointless at this point. Like, I mean, again, I hate to go into back in my day, man, but just like the idea, like going to a midnight record release and getting it and like open up and look at the lyric book and everything. It's just a special time. It really was. And it just like, it breaks your heart when you realize that that's just kids just don't do that stuff anymore. Like I think about like watching that movie I was just talking about, the 8-Bit Christmas. It's all this 80s nostalgia. I'm like, oh my God, these kids collect baseball cards. I was like, you have no idea what that is, do you? He's like, wow. Is that like Pokemon cards? I was like, sorta. We would wheel and deal and trade those and be like, hey, I got this card that's worth this much money and stuff. So yeah, but I always think back to that like music now. I'm just like, God, man, it was just like such a different time.
Even like the Guns N' Roses will use your illusions. That was a huge deal, and people were in line and camped out, and that was kind of a special time. Yeah, I wasn't one of the ones camped out, but it was cool.
I think I did. But you should do midnight releases for Metallica and Guns N' Roses. Yeah, yeah, it's good times.
Yeah, and there's nothing quite like the feeling of your own mortality than watching these older '80s bands live and seeing them, kind of have to be propped up to play, and they just don't sound the same. And it's like, man, I'm getting old. It's the end is near.
Yeah, I think it was after we just did the Get Back the Beatles thing that was on Disney Plus. We watched that, and I kind of fell down a rabbit hole watching some stuff on YouTube, and they were playing the George Harrison tribute concert from 2004, and I'm like, oh wow, Prince and Tom Petty. I'm like, oh my god, all these guys are dead. I was like, Jesus, how old am I? Yeah, so yeah, that I think when I was watching sports and you started seeing like players you liked when you were younger, and you're seeing like junior of them in sports now. That's when I was like, yeah, you're old, dude. So
Yeah,
it comes at you
yeah,
quick.
it does come at you quick. And I think, was it Nevermind just hit its 30-year anniversary? Was it 30
Yeah,
years?
every time I ask my Amazon device to play an album, and she's like 25th or 35th anniversary edition. I'm like, will you stop that? Yeah, it makes you feel great.
Yeah.
So, what about you? What are you reading right now, man?
I just started. Wizard and Glass today.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a lot of people that are doing a read along on my
Mhm.
Discord for that next year, and I can't wait to just be a silent observer on that one because I don't want to spoil anything for him. But I'm anxious to see those reactions because I think with Dark Tower, people either absolutely love it or they can't stand it, and it doesn't seem to be like any in the middle. And I feel like Wizard and Glass is kind of the make or break section for most people. So because it is long, but it is the most that he really leans into fantasy at that point in the series. And as a fantasy lover, I loved it, but some people are like, oh, I don't know, it's more like that kind of that Western thing. But I'll be interested to see what you think.
Yeah, when we started it, a lot of the people who had read the series, we started the Gunslinger, and they all said, "Just hang in there, just read the Gunslinger, just it'll make sense later." So we was okay. Well, had no idea what the hell was going on, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, I tell most people if you can commit to reading the first two, and I think that you'll probably decide by then because the way book two just starts off, like, whoa, this is totally different. I think that will tell you if it's a series for you or not. But yeah, it's just I love that series because it's just a mash of so many genres. I don't really think you can even define it as one. It really is just like 6 or 7 different genres just squished together. It's great.
Yeah, I used to have trouble with Stephen King with his character work, and I used to get a little bored with his little character moments. And it's starting to make sense to me. I'm starting to appreciate that more. So it's been fun to read the series.
Outstanding. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey, and I haven't read any Stephen King before this year, so
I am always in support of new people reading King. I mean, that's why I'll always make those videos, even though they aren't the most popular content on the channel. I'm always going to do it because that's my favorite author. So I just like to spread that gospel any way that I can.
Yeah, we did just finish 11/22/63. I love that.
Yeah,
That was
so
great.
good. Yeah,
Really good. Loved it. For you, what would your viewers be surprised to learn about you?
I'm a grand master at karaoke.
Really?
I don't know if they'd be like surprised. I mean, I think of most booktubers, we got decent voices. Who's shocked that you can sing a little bit. Well, I mean, when I used to go out a lot, now I don't do that anymore. Pretty much before kids, it was like, yeah, I mean, it was just Friday, Saturday night, man. We just go karaoke because it's just fun. But my youngest has gotten really interested in not really karaoke, but he'll put on like a song, he'll just be belting it out. And so I was like, well, I went and got one of these little off Amazon. It was like $30. It's like a microphone, but it has like a really good speaker on the front of it. And you can connect your device to it and play on YouTube. You can find karaoke stuff all over the place and do that. And we did that for like 4 hours one night. And that was just like, man, I miss doing this. And of course, my oldest is like, I didn't know you could sing that. And I'm like, well, you're almost 10. You didn't know that? Wow. So yeah, I think that might surprise some people.
What's your go-to? What if someone gave you a microphone and said, "Here, what song would you choose?"
Not to sound like a broken record here, but I always can fall back on the Beatles because that's what I've been listening to the longest in my life. But I have the exact vocal range as Paul Rogers from Bad Company. So I always will kind of do a Bad Company song, like Rock and Roll Fantasy or Feel Like Making Love, something like that. Dinosaur Rock is my thing, guys. Again, look who you're talking to here. The guy that wears nothing but dinosaur rock T-shirts. Of course, it's what I listen to.
And if you ever end up at a karaoke bar, you let me know, and I'll go, and I want to see that. I want to hear that.
All right, we could do that.
Yeah, I want to hear that. Yeah, that would be fun. And you said most booktubers have a voice. Have you ever thought about narrating a book?
Oh man, I'd love to. I would love to. I mean, the pipe dream here is someone from Audible sees my videos or the little introductions I make, and I say, I think this guy could be pretty good. I will pay my dues, and I'll read your smut novels for a year first, all that stuff until I get to read the good stuff. I would love it. That is the ultimate goal. That's what would make me quit my day job, is if someone wanted to hire me at Audible to record audiobooks. That would be just everything.
Wow.
Because like I read Harry Potter to my kids, and I do like all these different voices and stuff and good practice. And he's got to the point where he says spoiled with it that he made me start over a passage because he said, no, that's the voice you use for that other character. You got to come up with a different one. So he keeps me on my toes that way.
Wow. Pretty good.
Yeah.
He pays attention. And I know you've mentioned before you have no interest in being an author, but have you ever thought maybe one day, or have an idea for a book or just story ideas? Have you ever thought maybe?
It would just be completely ripping off other things. That's why I say I'm the worst D&D player ever, because I read books because I can't write them. I can't tell a story, so I like to read stories. I try every time I've been like, I've got a really good idea for a story. I'll start looking at it. I'll be like, dude, this is just Dune meets Lord of the Rings. That's all you're doing right now. You're just replacing names and you're squashing these events together. So I just don't have creativity that way. I just really don't. And when I read what I've written, I'm like, wow, that's a fragmented sentence, and you've used that word 3 times in one sentence. I'm just not a very good writer, so I wasn't going to pretend.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for authors, even whether they're self-pub or not. Just to put their work out there, it takes a lot of courage.
Absolutely. That's why I tell all the time is, hey, I may not have time to read your book, but I encourage you, man. Please follow your dream. That's all. Every author you read right now, there was a point where they're like, I wish someone would buy my book. Okay. Everyone's went through that sometimes. So it's just, again, yeah, follow your dream always.
Yeah. It takes, and I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know if I can handle spending a lot of time on a book and the amount of time and energy you put into it, and then have someone crap all over it. I don't know if I can handle that.
I'll make a 20-minute video on here, and when it doesn't go over, sometimes it breaks my heart a little bit. So I'm not sure I can handle that level of rejection. If you spent years writing something and someone told you it was terrible.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. Is there an album that you own that you can listen to forever and not ever get tired of it?
Man, you can make me sound like a Beatlemaniac here.
Yeah,
because I am. But I love the White Album by the Beatles, because I think it's influenced like just every kind of music. I mean, it's got soul, it's got R&B, it's got hard rock, it's got country, it's got blues. It's just a phenomenal album, and I love it because it's so ahead of its time. It pioneers so much stuff, so I can always go to that. Or Led Zeppelin 4 is obviously a really big one that I find myself going back to.
What are some misconceptions about booktube or YouTube in general that you hear a lot?
For me, that you're only doing that for clicks. I hate that when you're only doing this for clicks. I'm like, man, if I was doing this for clicks, trust me, I'd be doing a lot better. All right, I'd get 100,000 by now if I was doing stuff for clicks. I study data and trends and stuff like that, guys. I can look at this stuff and know what I could do if I wanted to do this as a full-time job, how to make it successful in more of that way. I always just said I would rather grow organically. But that's a big one. Or just accusing someone of not being honest. I'm like, why would they come on here and lie? Why would I come on this thing and say, oh yeah, I really love this book, even though I hated it? Why would I do that? And I think that I set that precedent early, because when Name of the Wind is like one of the most popular books in the fantasy community, and I took a dump on it. I think I set that precedent early. And that's what I had people telling me, like, look, I may not agree with you, but I love that you have the courage to do stuff like that. And I was like, I'm always going to be honest with you guys. So I think that's really it. When we get accused of being disingenuous or only doing stuff for money. Like, people really think we make good money off this. Look, some of them big time booktubers, they got like 1 million subs and stuff. They might, but I'm not. I make book money, buy a few books a month money. That's what I'm making. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny that they think that you're Scrooge McDuck with your booktube channel.
Well, I mean, look at like my most successful video on my channel was a Kindle video. It's got like 250,000 views. made like $300 off that video. Is that quit your job money, guys? No, it's not. So yeah, the algorithm doesn't pay what you guys think it does.
Yeah, it is a little funny. And I do have a very important question for you that may bring up the pitchforks.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I think so. But I'll also, if someone says no, I'll get it. I think what we've kind of fallen into is because people started saying they were more accepting of Die Hard being a Christmas movie, that everyone now thinks any movie that has Christmas in it anywhere is like I hear people putting like Harry Potter in for Christmas movies. I'm like, because it's Christmas for 5 minutes in that movie, it's a Christmas movie now. With Die Hard, he says Merry Christmas in the movie. So I'm like, all right, it's kind of hard. There's Christmas songs in it. So I think that it kind of, is it a movie that I say, hey, this movie makes me think of Christmas? No. But yeah, it's kind of hard for me to say it's not at this point. I mean, it's just such a weird argument, isn't it? It really
Isn't it?
is.
Yeah.
Oh.
People get really upset about
I
it.
mean, like you asked me, what's your favorite Christmas movie? I'm gonna go to like Christmas Story, Christmas Vacation, something like that. Something that really is the theme of the movie is Christmas. Whereas Die Hard, Christmas isn't the theme of the movie, but it takes place during Christmas. Where do you stand on this one?
I don't think it is. I have to say, I don't think it's a Christmas movie. And
I
I
can see
looked,
both sides. Yeah.
and I did wonder, was it released in December when it was in theater? So I looked it
I
up, and
don't
it was
think so.
released in
I don't know. It's
July.
a summer blockbuster, so
It
yeah.
was in like July of '84, I think. And it's like, where did this come from? That it's a Christmas movie? I think it's just a fun thing for people to, you know. I'm not gonna, if
I
anybody
think back
enjoys
to,
watching.
do you remember, oh God, it was like 6, 7 years ago when they had the thing is this dress blue or is it yellow? And people were like fighting over this. And I was like, thinking back on it, I'm like, I'm missing that was the stuff that we fought about, not the stuff that everybody fights about now. But I'm also like, that was the first time I was like, why are people so mad about this? So yeah, I think so. Now we talked about everybody feels like they've got to take a side on something, we can't just sit over here and be Switzerland anymore, or else, we're the bad guy. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a conversation. I can see both sides of it. But again, it's kind of what I do. Hey, I have this opinion. Let me hear what you think. If you disagree, yeah, I can see that.
I miss the days when we fought about whether the dress was blue or yellow.
Yeah, me too. That was
the good old days.
them were hard times, weren't they? Yeah,
They were. Yeah, we didn't know how lucky we were. And with studios, it seems like studios are afraid to take chances on unknown properties, and they're sticking to franchises and rebooting. And are you on nostalgia overload?
somewhat. It seems kind of weird because like this new Ghostbusters, it's very much a nostalgia movie, and I'm not gonna lie, it got the man tears out of me at the end because it did it right. It really did. I think what we've kind of got now is it's either this crazy fan service, or else it's just completely taking a dump on the fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see like some of these critics now that are just like trashing Ghostbusters because it's too, I'm like, basically because they're saying that all it was made for was to please the fans. And I'm like, well, what point did like pleasing the fans become wrong? When did that become wrong? I think there's a fine line there. It is a kind of a tough rope to walk to try to do something original. But I mean, this is why I said when Disney Plus was coming out, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's the Netflix killer," and I'm like, "No, it's not." Disney has more money than God. They take no chances. They want to stick with Marvel or Star Wars or remaking something from Marvel or Star Wars. They don't want to take any chances whatsoever. And I'm like, look at Netflix. Does everything that they make original work? No. But do they take chances? Absolutely, they take chances. So yeah, I don't know. That's what drives me crazy about Disney. It's just, you guys have all kinds of money, this disposable income to try new things. Try to make Aragon or something. You got the rights to that now. Make it. Try to make that or something instead of just sticking with the same damn thing over and over again. That's why me, a guy who grew up with Star Wars as my religion, I'm like, I'll watch Mandalorian with my kid. I don't care about any of the other stuff anymore. And that's just wild. I never expected that. Someone who just loves Star Wars to feel like that.
I am a little sad that the Alien franchise is in Disney's hands now.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be something.
I mean, Ridley Scott already, knocked it around a little bit, and it's like, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, if I think about it, I think I kind of laid that one to rest a while ago. When was the last good Alien movie? I think it was in the 80s. So I think I kind of laid that one to rest a while back.
Yeah, I think Alien 3, the theatrical release was kind of a mess, but the assembly cut was
Assembly
a
cut
little
was
bit.
good, pretty good. Yeah, I thought so. And I don't even remember the resurrection one. I just remember I was in the theater laughing at it. So yeah.
I've been trying to forget that since I saw it in the theater in like 98, 99, something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
then Prometheus, I was excited as hell for Prometheus, and I was like, in the theater, I was like, Ridley, nobody wants an intellectual alien movie. Come on, yeah.
Yeah, he's trying too hard. And what are your thoughts on Ridley Scott's recent comments about The Last Duel laying an egg at the box office?
I, again, this is the marketing side of me. I think the movie was just marketed wrong. And you saw this with James Bond too, is that they marketed it as one thing, and then when you see it, that ain't it. And I think that they need to get in control of it, because what they made the new James Bond movie look like was it was passing of the torch.
Yeah.
And James Bond fans weren't interested in that, at least in the States. That's why it didn't do as good in the States as James Bond movies regularly do. And then when I saw the movie, I was like, wow, it's nothing like they were advertising it. So I think Last Duel, and again, this is kind of tiptoeing into politics here. I think that some of the people marketing it as a Me Too movie really turns the people off, because who wants to go see a Me Too medieval movie? You know, the people, at least the people that watch those type of movies, that's probably not what they're interested in. They're interested in seeing some sword fights and stuff, you know. And I think that's what they should have marketed this as: the guy who brought you Gladiator, the guy that brought you Kingdom of Heaven, a new epic fantasy duel. Yeah, that's what they should have done. And I felt like it was all handled wrong in the marketing. But I think him saying what audiences, would you say like audiences are stupid? They only want like Marvel movies now or something.
I actually had it here on the what it boils down to is what we've got today are audiences who are brought up on these fucking cell phones, the millennials who do not ever want to be taught anything unless you told it on a cell phone. This is a broad stroke, but I think we're dealing with it right now with Facebook.
I didn't hear all this. Holy hell, man! He went out there guns blazing, huh? Okay.
he went in it. He
Well,
said we thought
people
he loved
gave
it.
Denny V, the guy who directed Dune, they gave him a lot of crap because he was saying he's never seen an MCU movie and he has no interest in seeing one. And I know that people always feel like a lot of these people have grown up with the MCU. That's their Star Wars. I understand that's their baby. They want to protect it. And they're like jumping all over him. Like, you got to understand, people like him, people like Scorsese, people like Steven Spielberg, they're different kinds of directors. They're not those types. So of course they're not going to be interested in that, you know? And yeah, they might be living a little bit in the past and not knowing what audiences want, but you're not going to be able to just change that for them overnight. They're never going to be into the thing. And I'm a superhero guy, man. I grew up reading comics. I was excited all these movies got made. Even I got burned out on it. Even I'm like not even interested. I haven't watched a MCU movie since Endgame. You know, I'm just like I'm just not interested anymore. You know, I watched Justice League, the Snyder cut, just to see if it was better. It was, but like it was hard. But yeah, that was it. But I grew up with all this stuff, man. I want to see fantasy adaptations now. That's why I like The Witcher. That's why I'm watching Wheel of Time. I want to see that stuff get adapted now, stuff that we thought we'd never see. You know, so I get where those directors are coming from, but the whole millennials on their fucking cell phones. I already did complain about not being able to go to a movie theater, not see without them not having to open their phone 12 times during the movie with their bright ass light down there. I'm like, you know, like this while I'm trying to watch the movie. So I get where he's coming from, but I don't know if that's necessarily it. I just don't know if there's audiences for that type of movie anymore. I mean, I grew up loving, you know, the sword and sandals epic stuff like that. Yeah. But I don't know, the modern audiences are really into that. They need to see something explode every 12 seconds, you know?
Yeah. I think plus there's so many options now, like you said, with Netflix. They take chances on so many franchises. There's so much content on Netflix. It's almost overwhelming. There's so much.
It is, and that's why I was like, I had no problem. People are like, oh man, when I cut the cord like about a decade ago, and I was like, we got like 3 streaming services. That's more than we need, and we can't even keep up with the content on those anymore. You know, there's so many original series on Netflix. Everybody tells me I got to watch, and I haven't even watched that stuff. So yeah, it's I have no interest in cable anymore. I don't really go to the theater a ton unless it's a movie that my kids want to see or something like that. That's really bad. Or obviously Dune, that was a, you know, once in a lifetime kind of thing for me. But yeah, no problems just watching what's on the streaming now. You know, talk about your kids never going outside. Well, we didn't have the option, but we always went outside. Yeah, we didn't have Netflix. We didn't have 85-inch televisions. You know, we had like 13-inch black and white bunny eaters with 2 channels. You know, they have different options now. So I get why they never want to go outside. You know, they're plugged in from sun up to sundown.
Yeah, when all the Marvel movies were coming out, I told my kids, man, if this would have happened when I was your age, I would have been throwing a backflip every summer or every 6 months or whatever it is. Because for those
That's why
movies to
when
be
there's an
made,
adaptation that comes out and people are like, "Oh, this sucks," I'm like, "You guys are so spoiled. Do you know how bad superhero movies were when we were young? Oh my god, they were so." And we got like one every 4 or 5 years. You know,
yeah.
you guys get one like every 4 or 5 weeks, and most of them are at least watchable. So yeah, that's why I mean, like people complain about Wheel of Time. Like you remember what bad fantasy adaptation looks like? Go check out Legend of Earthsea. Look that up. Holy hell.
And with the MCU, so are you just not interested after Endgame? Is it just you've had
I
enough
don't
of
know.
it?
I mean, look, I felt like it. It felt like the end to me. I take it back. I did go watch the next Spider-Man one because my kid Spider-Man nut. And look, I read Spider-Man every issue from the beginning until about the early 2000s. So I was a big time Spider-Man honk myself. So I went and it's just like I don't know. I didn't like the version of the character they're doing, but I was like, look, I'm going to take you if you want to go. I mean, you don't have to. Don't base this off of what I think. Is this curmudgeon who's like, this isn't my Spider-Man, stuff like that. I mean, I was basically J. Jonah Jameson there. It's not my Spider-Man. It's Iron Spider, but it's just like, after, felt like it was at the point where we're watching Michael Jackson's backup dancers. You got your big Avengers are gone now, and it was like, I don't care about Shang-Chi. I don't care about the Eternals. This isn't the stuff that I'm here for. I mean, I'll be interested in X-Men or something like that, or Blade. That would be cool. But I think it's great that they took some risks and they're trying out some properties that aren't so popular. I mean, I didn't know Guardians of the Galaxy, and now that's like one of my favorite movies. Was Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm glad they still take chances. But I think it just that bubble might not have burst for the general public, but that bubble definitely burst for me. I think where I'm just like, I can watch an MCU movie, and I feel like it's more formulaic than a James Bond movie at this point. I can go to the bathroom and be like, "It's okay. I know what I missed." It loves its formula, and it works. It works. It's the biggest franchise of all time because it works.
And a lot of it is setting up the next movie. You watch the movie and it's setting up the next one. I think maybe not for the general public, but I think we're close to that bubble bursting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a place like as fantasy readers, we see why does every book that comes out have to be book one of a planned 7-book series? It's like, can anyone just write a fucking standalone book anymore? That's why I still fall back on my Stephen King and my Michael Crichton and stuff, because it's just one book, it's over and it's done. I ain't got to commit, to reading 14-book series anymore, things like that, So yeah, that's how I kind of feel with that. I didn't watch Black Widow. I'm not going to understand what's going on in this movie now. Forget it. That's kind of how I feel. I was all about it when it was going. Look, I mean, that was the kind of thing you dreamed about as a kid, is that they were going to make numerous movies and then have the Avengers, or numerous movies and have the Justice League. These are things that you dreamed about, and I got to see them in my lifetime. I'm happy my kids didn't have to go through all those bad adaptations we did. I'm just tired of it.
Yeah, I'm a DC guy, but the movies are such a mess, and it's so disappointing with Warner Brothers what they've done with it.
Yeah, people always, whoa, so you just hate DC? I'm like, no, man, I prefer DC. I'm a Justice League guy. Batman. I'm all about all this stuff. Superman, Green Lantern. I'm wild about it. I was just like, the reason the Marvel movies I think worked is because Marvel Studios got in charge of their own properties, and so they knew how to do them. Whereas Warner Brothers has no clue. No clue. Like, I don't even care what it's about. Just put a Batman movie out because we know it'll do good.
Yeah.
They have no clue. They put Zack Snyder had a vision for it, and while it wasn't what I wanted, I wish that they were going to do that. Then let him do it. Quit cutting his feet from under him. That was how I felt about it. When I watched the Snyder cut, I was like, that's a decent movie that I actually wouldn't like seeing more off of. And I was like, it's like a completely different movie than you guys put out. So I was just like, too many cooks in the kitchen with that. And I've just given up. I'm never going to see a good Green Lantern movie. Maybe my kids will get it before they go, but I'm never going to get it. But yeah.
I was one of those weirdos who was pushing for the Snyder cut all those years, so I was really excited. And I was nervous to watch your video when you did one. I was like, I hope he.
No, I mean, a lot of people with that was just like, oh, you guys need to stop being babies or whatever. I'm like, no, man, fight for what you believe in. I'm for it. I was like, I don't think it's going to do anything. And then I even said that I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference, and I was wrong. And now it's a big difference between me and a lot of other content creators. I got no problem saying I was wrong on that. I enjoyed the Snyder cut. I really did. I'm glad that people fought for it. Because I don't like this campaign about how making fans the enemy. This happened a lot after the reception to The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Just turning fans into the enemy. And I was like, When did fans become the enemy? I hate that. I hate when you treat like that. Are there bad fans? Sure, there aren't everything, but I was like, just completely like, we're talking professionals that work for like Lucasfilm attacking fans. I was like, that is wild. I can't even, again, I'm a business school major. Don't bite the hand that feeds. It's just business 101. Don't attack your consumer. So it's been crazy to me to see that happening in media. It's wild.
Yeah. What surprises me more, I think, is that people don't revolt and people weren't upset and say, we're not going to watch the next Star Wars movie. They still went and watched the next one.
Yeah, it's like the Solo that didn't do that well, but I was like, I think that was more of like nobody asked for that movie. We know what you're doing here, and we're not really interested. Yeah, when people went and saw Rise of Skywalker, I was like, why? None of you liked the last movie. Why are you going? They're going to keep making them if you guys just keep going, and that's why I rejected all those YouTube channels who basically their job is just to be as negative on stuff as possible. I was like, so you saying all this stuff about how they've ruined Star Wars or whatever, and then what happens? It comes out and you go see it.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Now, look, I don't boycott stuff. If you want to boycott something, that's great. But I mean, I don't personally do it. But to me, if someone's insulting me, last thing I'm going to do is give you money. And I felt like Star Wars, Lucasfilm in general, was just insulting all those fans that had kind of built up that foundation for that franchise for 40 years. And they just basically said, oh, you're toxic or you're man babies or whatever word they used that week. And it just turned me off to the point where I was like, all right, well, not getting my money anymore. So
yeah, it's too bad. And speaking of things nobody asked for, have you seen the new Dexter?
I haven't. I didn't even finish the show. It got, I think it was like, I'm sorry, this is like a 10-year-old spoiler for you guys. Like, when his sister was romantically interested in him, I was like, I'm done with this. How did this go from like the most sharply written show on TV to unwatchable in about a span of a season and a half? I think only Walking Dead has done it faster than Dexter did. That quick turnaround of being like, it's can't miss TV to like can't watch TV. But I mean, I again with stuff like that, revivals, I hope it's redemption. Like I call it the Rocky Balboa. I hope it's redemption. I really do. I've heard decent things about the new Dexter, but I'm not watching it.
Yeah, I've heard decent things. I wish I would have not watched till the end. I think I wish I would have stopped after season 3, the Jimmy Smith's season. That was good. I should have just stopped, but it was a mess.
It happens to most shows. Sadly, it's like you think about why do people like Breaking Bad so much, and I think it's because it burned out, rather than faded away. It went out on top,
Yeah.
A lot of those shows went out when they were still really, really in their stride. And a lot of those shows go too long, I mean, like I love Sons of Anarchy. Could have been 2 or 3 years shorter, I think, That's the kind of way that I look at a lot of these things. A lot of these shows that I love, it's like, yeah, they probably could have been shorter, but, as long as people are watching them and want to keep making them, I don't think you have enough creators with the courage to say, hey, we've got this much story. I think it's Schitt's Creek. Apparently Netflix wanted to offer them like a ton of money to keep that show going. And I'm like, no, we had a story and we've ended it and we were going to stick to that. So I respect when creators can do that, but I understand it's hard. You got something that works. Like you get these authors now, like I was writing a trilogy, but I never expected this series to be as popular as it is. Now it's going to be 5 books.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why your series starts to feel a little long in the tooth at the end because you broke your original plan. So I think that happens with just about any creation, really.
Yeah, they're speaking of Breaking Bad, they're still throwing pizzas on that house's roof.
Are they really?
Yeah,
that's terrible.
They still have tours and everything. We still see, they do tours and stuff. It's pretty cool. But have you seen?
Are you out there? Are you out there where they film? Oh, great! Yeah, that's a waste of good pizza.
Yeah, they get the same pizza from the same place and they throw it on the roof and yeah, it's crazy. But
so New Zealand gets all the Lord of the Rings tourism, and you get pizzas.
We get all the Breaking. Yeah, we get the meth fans here. So what are you gonna do? Be famous for something, I guess. Have you seen Better Call Saul?
Yeah, we love it. We love it quite a bit. We were both, my wife and I were both nervous it was just going to be a cash grab, name recognition. But look, I've loved Bob Odenkirk since the 90s. He was doing a skit show on HBO called Mr. Show with David Cross. Mm-hmm. So I've always been a fan of his. So to see him be like an Emmy level actor has just been like a treat to watch. And I really tell people is like with Better Call Saul is like, this isn't like look, it ain't better than Breaking Bad, but I was like, I think it stands right there with it. It's a very good compliment to it. It really is. I wish more people would give it a chance.
Yeah, I'm in the camp when I'm on the fence of whether it's better or not. I think the performances in Better Call Saul are just
I think when it stands on
amazing.
its own, it doesn't try to tie into into
Yeah,
Breaking Bad too much. Like, look, I love seeing Gus again. I'm not gonna lie, but some of the parts I'm like, maybe they should like, calm down some of this. I love having Mike as a main character on the show, you know. So I'm actually sad it's gonna be the last season. So that means that
yeah,
they've done it right for sure.
yeah. And speaking of Sons of Anarchy and The Walking Dead, I think they stopped. We recently rewatched Sons of Anarchy, and I think the musical montages were a little bit too much for me the second time watching it. There
Really,
is
yeah.
like,
See, that was always like my favorite part. But yeah, when we were rewatching The Shield, my wife had
hmm,
never seen The Shield. It's after that I was going to get her into Sons of Anarchy. So I'll see how that works, how
yeah,
I
see how
feel
that holds
about it.
up. Because it was kind of cool the first time we rewatched it, and it's like, man, these someone needed to step in and stop him from these. That's
Yeah, some of them
enough
would go
for
like 6 minutes long. It's like, all right, yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's like
kind of long
yeah,
for a montage. It's not exactly a montage anymore. It's a music video.
yeah, it's just like okay, that's enough, Kurt. You need to calm down. But they stopped Sons of Anarchy at I think AMC at the time was like it was FX, and they stopped it after a certain amount of seasons. I wish they would have done that with The Walking Dead because I was a big fan of the comics, and they totally just ruined that series.
Yeah, yeah. I read the comics. I think, man, I think I'm only like 20 issues from the end of actually
Hmm.
finishing that comic. But I think I got to the point where I was like, well, let me see what the show's doing. And then I was like, for a while on that show, I felt like it was following the comic pretty well. Like it would change characters, it would change like who was doing stuff, but it kept like those story beats the same, I
Hmm.
felt. And then once it got to about the point about Negan, it was just like, this isn't the same show anymore. It something just fell off a cliff. I don't know what happened, but yeah, me and my wife were just like, this is just like unwatchable. And we had like 13 episodes in our TiVo, and we just deleted them and said, all right, I guess that's it. And I can't believe it's still
Yeah,
going. It's still going.
yeah,
And there's two spinoffs now too. God.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Must still
Yeah,
pull crazy ratings, I guess. I have no idea. I don't know anybody anymore that watches it anymore.
I don't
So
either. Yeah, no idea who's watching that. I feel almost sorry for them. But
so much good stuff to watch, guys. Yeah.
yeah, there's so much, and something like The Boys. Did you watch The Boys?
Oh yeah, yeah, we like that because I think that was the thing where it was like, okay, we're kind of exhausted with superhero TV, and this is just like trashing all the superhero stuff. I mean, it's blatantly making fun of Marvel and DC like nonstop, and I love it. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And
Have
I
you ever?
love Carl Urban. I've loved him since Lord of the Rings. So yeah, I'll watch anything with him in it. He's so good as Butcher on there. So good.
You've seen Dread, right?
Yeah, yeah, his version. Yeah, yeah. Not.
It's only his lips, but
Yeah, I try to remember that, not the Sylvester Stallone version. Yeah.
yeah, I am the law, or what was it?
yeah,
Yeah, so, those are the days. Yeah.
my
Speaking
wife's
of
excited
yeah,
for season 3 of The Boys because Jensen Ackles, who played Dean on Supernatural, is going to be on there this year, and that's like her celebrity husband. So yeah, she's very
nice.
excited.
He's on our list. Yeah,
He is on her list. He is at the
yeah.
top, and he is reigning undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. So yeah.
What was your reaction to when season 2 they released the episodes? I think weekly. I think they did the first 3 and then weekly, and there's this huge uproar about how dare you not let us
I
binge the
think
whole season.
if they had told people they were doing that, because I mean, look, they told people they were doing that Wheel Time, 3 episodes, and then weekly thereafter. They told people that with The Expanse, and it went over well. So they didn't tell anybody with The Boys. So people were like, "What the heck? Where's episode 4?" And you had to go actually on the website to see. Oh yeah, now every Friday. Yeah, I think it pissed some people off. So I think if you tell people up front, because I mean, look, Mandalorian proved that there are people who still want to do stuff weekly and talk about it weekly. But Witcher proved there are still a lot of people who just want to binge it. You know, personally, I like the binge. But I will admit that Mandalorian doing that weekly with my kids and being able to talk to them about it all during the week, that was a really cool thing. And now with Wheel of Time, me and my co-host Madison, we're doing
Mhm.
Wheel of Time after shows. It's a lot of fun to talk about. So for those reasons, I really like it. It does take me back to when we were waiting weekly for episodes of Game of Thrones, and we would have, all our talk and speculation, or us, as book readers were like, making fun of all the people with their really bad theories and stuff. At least until they passed them up. But there's something to be said for both of it. Really, with me, because I don't make a lot of time to watch TV. We'll just be like, give me the binge. I just want the binge, So
And speaking of Game of Thrones, I have to ask. I know you've talked about this about the books. You should read the books because even if they're not finished or may never be finished, they're still worth
Yeah,
reading.
they're amazing.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the series of the last 2 seasons? I know have you gone back and rewatched them and tried to look at it from a different, try to kind of lower your expectations and watch it again?
I was a type that was like, you see the people, the Wheel of Time people that are like nuts and they're obsessing over every single scene. I was that because I had started reading A Song of Ice and Fire back in like 2000. So I was following all the pre-production, all the casting, everything for that show leading up to it. I was obsessed with it. And it was the thing where like first 3 or 4 seasons, every episode I would rewatch every week just to see the things that I missed. And I would like reread that section of the book, you know, because I was all in on it and had a lot more time back then. Pre-kids, man, you had all kinds of time. It was wild.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think once they passed the books and they started doing their own thing, that's when I stopped really rewatching anything. With me, I and people keep telling me I'm crazy about this. I think there's a lot of revisionist history. No one was talking about season 5, 6, or 7 being bad while waiting for season 8 to come out. No one. There was arguments. There was articles. There was news specials about this is the greatest show of all time. That didn't happen to season 5, 6, and 7 were terrible. I think season 8 was so bad it opened up a lot of people's eyes to where they decided to go back and rewatch, and they nitpicked the hell out of some of that stuff. Was it perfect? No, but I was like, my whole argument was like, you guys never had a problem with it. There were people counting how many sleeps they had until season 8 come out. And that doesn't happen to a show that was, you know, limping to the finish line. So to me, I think the show was easily the best thing on TV until that final season. And it just said, and I don't know what happened. I mean, we can listen to all the stories we want. But yeah, no, it was clear that they were so checked out and they were not. I just don't understand why HBO just said, okay, if you guys want to be done with this, we're just going to bring in someone else. Because apparently even George said he wanted the show to go 10 years. You know, so I just makes no sense to me why they said, okay, you guys want to go make a Star Wars movie or something, that's fine. We're going to bring in new showrunners, I guess. I don't know why they didn't do that. They didn't protect their investment at all. So, because now I feel like the IP's poisoned. Do you know anybody excited for House of the Dragon? I don't know one person excited for House of the Dragon. I mean, everybody's like, I'll check it out. But there's no one excited. There's no one talking about it. No one counting down to it.
Yeah, it's I think season 7 when there was a lot of dick jokes, it's like, okay, there's something's not quite right. Something's changed.
I think I said that it was like the first year they were doing content that wasn't from the books. And I think the mountain comes up behind Master Parcell and he actually like just like rips one because he's so scared. And I was like, there's a red flag. And people are like, how dare you, sir? This is the most perfect show. I'm like, okay, all right. So it's kind of funny in hindsight. I was like, I remember when you guys jumped on me because I said it was stupid that they had a character fart in a very serious scene. But yeah, you know, revisionist history is always going to be a thing.
I almost feel bad for George R. R. Martin with his with writing the books. He must feel he can't win. He's in a no-win situation with that.
Well, here's what I've argued this before is that you know what, if the stories that happened, like the ending of the show, if George R. R. Martin wrote that exact thing, I bet he'd find a way to do it right, and it would be actually quite riveting and interesting. And you'd be like, yeah, of course Bran should be sitting on the throne. Probably would, because he's a good writer. Dan and Dave are very good at literal adaptation. They're very clearly not good at writing original content. And I think that's very clear, because why was it the best show of all time when they had source material? Because they were adapting. There was some changes, obviously, later on, some decisions they made, like with Dorne and things like that. But still, it was one of the best little adaptations I've ever seen, maybe short of like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, you know. But yeah, they definitely probably, that's not their forte, is original writing.
And they didn't even get to make their Star Wars movie.
Yeah. I think they're doing that Remembrance of Earth's Past for Netflix. I'm like, well, at least they've got that series complete, so there's that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but I think you mentioned The Expanse. That show is a lot better than it should be.
I think so. I know that people have read the books that go in the show and they complain about stuff. I was like, I am enjoying this show so much. I'm going to break my tradition of reading it before I see it, because I was like, that show has such good killer twists, plot twists, and stuff I never saw coming. I felt like I was ruining it reading the book. So I actually stopped after I finished book 2. I said, I'm just going to watch the show, and when it's done, I'm going to blow through it. So yeah, it's ending here, God, in a couple weeks, I think. and then I'm just going to start back on book 3 and go. I just got the last book.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm excited to speed run through that because that's an awesome series. But yeah, I love the show. I think it's the best sci-fi show probably since Battlestar Galactica. I love it.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. It was funny because I was at a used bookstore recently, and I was going to grab the first book, and it, you know, the little tags under the books. It was a you read local author James S.A. Corey. It's like, oh shit, I didn't know he lived here. So
Nice.
maybe yeah. Not that it matters, but you know, maybe I'll run into him one of these days. I'll get lucky. Really quickly, what are your thoughts on the change on YouTube, the thumbs down change? I know some people are upset.
It doesn't matter to me, really. I don't think that really. What people don't know is thumbs up, thumbs down. That helps your engagement, regardless. Getting thumbs down doesn't boost you down in the algorithm or whatever. They consider that engagement. Any type of engagement. There's no such thing as bad engagement. So it didn't really bother. I think what upset them is them making it sound like they were doing it to protect small content creators, and I think anyone with a brain knew that wasn't true. You look back to like Ghostbusters 2016, which was like the most thumbs down YouTube video of all time. They're doing it for reasons like that. And so I mean it's their thing. They get to do what they want to do. But I think just telling people, oh, we're doing this to protect small content creators, like, cut the shit. Yeah, nobody buys that.
And do you have a morning routine?
Coffee and lots of
Coffee.
it.
Lots of
Really,
coffee.
yeah. I don't drink booze very much anymore, like, if at all, because I lost a lot of weight and I just get drunk really quick now, and I don't like to do that in front of my kids. So I don't really drink very much at all anymore. So, but one thing I'm not giving up is my caffeine. So yeah, coffee, lots of coffee.
Do you add MCT oil to your coffee?
No.
No.
I use stevia drops, like the stevia in the raw.
Yeah, I've been trying the keto protein powder with MCT oil.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't taste like coffee anymore. It just tastes like chocolate. But you know, I was curious if you use that.
When I first started, I was tempted to do it, but I found these stevia drops, and they've worked fine because I was real big on Splenda before that. And Splenda's pretty bad for you, actually. So I was like, hey, who knew? Yeah.
Plot twist, yeah. So before I know you have other things to do. So before I let you go, I have a few questions that I like to finish out every conversation with.
Sure.
So the first question is, if the zombie apocalypse happened today, what would be your weapon of choice?
Well, I live in Texas, so we do have some firearms in the safe. I have a Ruger 9mm. I don't know, how far I'd get with that because it will make a lot of noise. So I do have 2 swords too, so I'll probably use some of my swords to, at least if it's not a horde, I can use some swords and just, from a distance, because it is a long sword. So maybe that. I've always wanted a spear. I haven't gotten a spear yet. Maybe I'd get a spear. I don't know. But I got to think about ammo use here. I don't know how to shoot a bow and arrow. I'm never going to learn how, so I can't say that. So I think that's a great weapon because, reusable ammo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing that worries me about guns is running out of ammo or the noise.
Yeah, the noise attracts too much attention. So I'd have to have a good silencer. But then again, you're going to run out of ammo eventually.
Yeah. Speaking of zombies, do you prefer fast or slow zombies?
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist. I always like the slow, but I think it was when I saw Zack Snyder did a Dawn of the Dead remake, and the zombies were like super fast, and then it just like, wow, it just like revitalized the genre to me. I was like, holy hell, I haven't even thought about what happened if they were actually fast. It was like when they remade Friday the 13th, and I was like, whoa, Jason's like running and shit. It's kind of neat. It kind of makes it even more scary because now you don't have any time to react. No more, oh, I can't shoot because that's someone I used to know. Now it's, well, you best do it quick or else you're gonna get eaten. So I think I kind of like the fast ones now.
Yeah, I think I've converted to the fast ones. Have you seen Black Summer on
I have
Netflix? No, it's fast zombies.
Okay, all right.
Interesting show. Yeah, if you're bored, yeah, check it out. Are there 3 books you would recommend just to anyone if you just met someone on the street and they said, Mike, recommend 3 books to me? What 3 books would you recommend and why?
Well, Dune is my favorite book of all time, so that's always going to be locked there. Then I have to really just kind of know what the person's like interests are, really. if you're into fantasy, I'm always going to say Tolkien's the place to start because that's where I started, and I feel like that's the best gateway to seeing if you like fantasy or not. But I get that writing style doesn't click with a lot of modern audiences, so it's kind of iffy. And then if you don't care about the size of the book at all, I gotta say that either The Stand or It by Stephen King, because I just think it's just such a well-rounded cast of characters, and every character is developed so well. And it's just what I like about with The Stand is you just got just this crazy cool like real life fantasy quest, going across the country on foot. And then you also with it you have I love coming of age, and you got 7 of them in there. So that's always kind of the way that I would lean. But I think that King's a lot more accessible for people who've never read him before to be able to, as you're experiencing right now. And you don't have to have like a PhD in anything to start reading Stephen King. I think it's accessible to just about anybody. So I would say that. Whereas something like Lord of the Rings or Frank Herbert's Dune, you might need to have read a few books first. I want one to be your first book you ever read.
Yeah. I hope to read It and The Stand this year. So finish It this year soon, hopefully. What was your first job?
Well, I guess we can't really count like mowing yards and raking leaves and getting paid to go buy the new Aerosmith album or something like that. Just can't really count that because I wasn't on a payroll. But just sacking groceries at a local grocery store out here. I think that was the first one, and that was not a good time in life, guys. I don't think anybody ever like, oh yeah, my first job was great. Well, mine was even less stellar than most. It's not a fun job. You deal with a lot of angry people.
What did you learn from that job?
Don't stay in school. Don't get a good job. Get a job in an office, something like that, I think. And it's funny because I didn't go back to business school until I was, 38. But, it's never too late.
So if the last question I have for you, trying to ask this of everyone so I can, get better at asking questions. But if roles were reversed and you were me, was there a question that I should have asked?
Who's your favorite new kid on the? No, I'm kidding. I think.
Who's your favorite new kid on the block? Is that?
Yeah. I don't know that I never think about that question that someone should ask me. Outside of like, what are you reading or whatever. But I think that anybody who follows my channel at all really has no problem knowing what I'm reading at the time because I talk about it constantly. But I really don't know. That's a great question that you kind of put me on the spot on that one. I have no idea. I mean, I think that you covered most of the bases. I mean, you covered my coffee intake. You covered my troubles with my kids, and you've covered like movies I like and stuff. I mean, you covered pretty much that's pretty much it.
Cool. Yeah, I try and get better and expand the repertoire a little bit. So
no, it's good. It's a good question. I just don't know if I have a. I don't know. That's like a where do you see yourself in 5 years kind of question. I think, man, gosh, I wish I'd known that before I came in the room. I could have thought about it kind of question. I don't know.
Yeah, I always like to tell them I picture myself where you're sitting, of course, but
yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, and then they all laugh and we get a good laugh. But cool. I want to thank you again. I know you're really busy, have a lot going on, have family and everything else. So thank you for taking a few minutes of your night and just to chat.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. Anytime.
Yeah, don't tell me that because I'll be bothering you again. So don't be careful. You got to be careful what you tell me.
I got you.
Okay. Cool. Have a good night and thanks again.